Right. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's enjoying their time with us at EmpowerHR. It's learning a ton the last yesterday and already the session we had this morning to kick off the day. Wanted to welcome everyone to our next session where we will discuss the shift from performance management to performance enablement. My name is Talia Fenech. I'm a senior customer success manager here at Betterworks. And I'm excited to be joined today by two leaders who have transformed their organizations by evolving from traditional performance processes to really focusing on enabling their employees by integrating OKRs, coaching, feedback, and recognition. So Helen and Kate, I will let you both introduce yourselves. Helen?
Kia ora, e te whānau, e re rangatira no ingarangi o kutupuna, I tupu aki o ki te rangi, ke re rā o e noho ana naene, no re rā ka mihi ki ngā pai maunga o Waitakere, me te moana ko Manukau, he Pākehā ahau, he tangata tariti ahau, ko Helen taku ingoa, ko taku mahi ki Zed Energy, ko te pōtangata. Hi everybody, welcome from New Zealand, from Aotearoa. It is just gone 6:46 in the morning and hopefully the sun will keep shining. I just welcomed everyone from New Zealand, so everyone who's gathered here, and my ancestors are from England. I grew up in Titirangi in Auckland. I still live there. I live in the beautiful Waitakere Ranges and look at the Manukau Harbour every day. I am Pākehā. I was not, my ancestors did not come from New Zealand, but I'm a person of the treaty, which we honour in New Zealand. My name is Helen. I work at Zed Energy and I'm the Chief People Officer. And I've been working with Betterworks for 2 years, feels like longer than that. We've been on a huge journey and I'm very excited to be with you today and talk about our learnings, our experience, and yeah, to share our insights and be part of this great community. So hi everyone, welcome, and I'll hand you over to Kate.
Thanks, Helen. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Beatty, and I am coming to you from Colorado Springs, Colorado in the US. I've been with Vertiv now for about 4 years. And prior to that, I was with the Center for Creative Leadership for about 20 years. Actually, Betterworks predates me at Vertiv. Vertiv has been using Betterworks ever since we were formed, which was late 2017, early 2018. We were formed as essentially a spinoff into private equity from Emerson Electric. And we like to call ourselves a $4 billion startup because that's essentially what we were at that point in time. We provide power and thermal solutions for infrastructure like data centers and telecommunications. And so we're probably powering what's going on behind the scenes for a lot of the EmpowerHR conference here. My role here is the Vice President of Global Learning and Organization Development. And I've just had the joy of working with the Betterworks team for the whole time I've been here, as I said. So looking forward to sharing with you some of the lessons that we've been learning over that time today.
Well, thank you both so much for being here and for those introductions. We'll go ahead and get started. And we've been talking a lot about, performance management and how it used to be defined as that corporate management tool that really helped managers monitor and evaluate employees' works. But we're, really focusing a lot more on the shift to, performance enablement and development and how that tool is used. But I'd love to start off today by learning a little bit more about the why and why your organization has really decided to make that change from the traditional methods to one that enables and develops employees. Kate, do you want to get us started?
I'll be happy to. Yeah, I'll chime right in here. I think we have a benefit of having an executive team that is pretty excited about the power of people driving a lot of what happens in the organization. So when we formed, as I mentioned, as this $4 billion startup, one of the things that we knew was true to the culture that we had come from was a fair amount of kind of top-down type management, I would say. And we were really trying to push away from that. We were trying to fuel a lot more empowerment and engagement throughout the organization. So we used language, which we called performance development. Kind of interesting, right? It was very similar to performance enablement that we'll be talking about here today. But for us, that spoke to a culture where, number one, employees know and understand that big strategic objective that we have. Number two, that they are encouraged to find ways to align their work to those big strategic objectives. And number three, that they're getting frequent feedback on that, so that we're not waiting for a year cycle, right? Where given individuals here that maybe their work is off track or not aligned. And so all of these things are a part of that performance development culture, including the need to push ourselves as individuals and employees to continue to grow and develop over time as our customers' needs are changing and growing over time. So that was really kind of the heart of what we were trying to do. And we were aware of the good work of the Betterworks team, the work of John Doerr and others. And so we're very excited at that point in time to say, let's give this a try inside our organization.
Thank you. Helen, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, we had been going on quite an interesting journey with more agile ways of working and looking at increasing our line of sight to between strategy and execution. So actually having our people feeling really connected to what we were going after. The other thing that we knew was going on in our organization was that we had some real challenges with recognition. We also knew there was opportunity to do performance management differently. And I remember working with someone many years ago who said, look, performance is only half about capability. The other half is all about context and environment. And we have such a big opportunity to influence the context and environment around performance. So we decided that it was time to take the leap and try something new and move from quite a static performance management context where you have an annual plan, and we'd been doing kind of quarterly performance check-ins, but it was still quite retrospective and a lot about measurement and arguing the toss about what people were going to be focusing on, rather than a continuous conversation that was focused on enabling people to perform. So the kind of shift was from focusing on enabling performance away from just holding people to account. So the shift in the conversations and the conversation design was a very big part of what helped us with our conversations for coaching, feedback, and recognition in terms of what is it that we need to be unlocking or unblocking or doing differently to enable you to actually achieve your objectives rather than have you achieved them, what's your progress. So yeah, big focus on enabling rather than just purely holding to account.
Thank you. And you both touched on it, but would love to learn a little bit more about how you're actually bridging the gap between your people and your business strategy. Helen, I know you touched on it when we spoke last week, just a little bit more about how OKRs and your people processes are aligning to the overall strategy.
They're pretty tightly linked, actually. So we have a 3-year strategy. I've got it up on the wall at home. My husband loves the home decorations, company's strategy sitting up on the wall. And as part of that, we have 2 quite big people components in there. One is actually to have a really strong, like top 10% employee net promoter score, because we believe we can't deliver the results to our customers if our people don't actually experience a similar great experience working with us, and that our culture and our capability deliver extraordinary performance. So our people strategy is woven into the company strategy. Then within that roadmap, we have annual objectives, but we set OKRs on a quarterly basis. So we've got objectives that stand 3 years out, but we review our OKRs on a quarterly basis, and then those are actually sitting in Betterworks and they cascade through. So people have direct line of sight to what we're focusing on as a company, and then they can set individual objectives, but you can see where everything else is. It's very transparent. I think one of the questions that you had further down that we're potentially going to talk to is, how do you make this stick? Our chief executive adores this because he can absolutely see what's going on anywhere in the business. He can see the updates. And there's nothing more focusing than sitting, which we do once a quarter in our executive meeting, and having him just pull it up and throw it up on the screen and ask everyone to talk to their outcomes and talk to what they're doing and whether there's anything that we need to change. We do it as a check-in to make sure the OKRs don't need shifting in this COVID world. We just check that our context hasn't shifted such that our OKRs need to shift. But yeah, the complete transparency of being accountable to your peers in the room, going, yep, that's my objective, I own that, here's where we're up to, this is the help I need, this is the shift I think we need to make this quarter. Is there's not a lot of mystery between our strategy, our OKRs, and our individual objectives.
It's so important to have that transparency and just, have the agility to be able to adapt as needed.
Yeah.
Kate, did you want to add anything?
I would just echo a lot of what Helen said. I mean, I think the core word here is transparency. And we certainly were struggling with that kind of thing, probably for two reasons, if I'm perfectly candid. In our early days of formation and under a private equity context, it's a little bit challenging sometimes to actually, be able to think multiple years out. So we were developing our capabilities in doing that. And certainly when we went public in February of 2020, that was, a time when we had to be that way. And so we pushed ourselves in that. But the Betterworks platform is, and one of the things that is so powerful about it is the ability of any employee to go in and click on those top company objectives and be able to see how this strategy that we just talked about in our all employee meeting is now reflected in these particular goals, and then to be able to see the cascade of those throughout the organization. And that's a very, very powerful thing. We've done numerous different types of surveys, not just engagement surveys, but surveys around our Elevate Our Talent program, which is what we have called this over time. And that is one of the bits of feedback that we get, that employees really appreciate being able to see that and to know how their work is immediately connected into it. On the engagement survey side, we saw a huge jump, 7 points from 2018 to 2022, and that was fueled by an 8-point increase in the item, I am clear how Vertiv intends to achieve its goals. So that was a very powerful thing. And I think there were two things in it. One is we were more clear as an organization about what that strategy is and how people are a core enabler in there. But secondly, when you have a system and a way of being like this platform enables, it allows us to share that.
It's really powerful numbers. Thank you for sharing that. So we can shift a bit, and when we're thinking a little bit more about engaging your teams and individuals at your companies and weathering the storm of the Great Resignation, what are your employees getting out of performance enablement or performance development, and how does this practice help retain the employees at your organizations during this time? Helen, I'll let you answer this question if you'd like to start.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the interesting thing for us has been the shift to actually owning your own performance. So the CFR process for us is really empowering for our people. They, as a team member, I own my own performance. I get to talk about my progress. I get to ask for help. I get to talk about my well-being. So we've introduced a well-being component to our conversation, which is enabling people to share what their context is, and it helps as the line manager for you to understand if there's anything else that may be impacting someone's performance. And the conversation design is all around my manager being deeply committed to my success. And if you think about the desire to make an impact and to feel like you're actually supported to do that, it's quite a big deal. The other thing that I get is we've changed the language on it, but the recognition component of Betterworks, we've called shout outs. It's a bit more Kiwi, but what it's enabled is it's really democratized feedback. And so people are getting really nice feedback from their peers and from people all around the organization that's popping up in that system. It goes to the individual and it goes to their line manager. So there's just a more sense of collective support of our people doing great work. And then on the flip side, if I'm also a manager, I get to share context with my people. I'm prompted to recognize performance and why it matters. And I'm playing to the same rules. I'm getting the same experience because I'm using the same system. So my chief executive and I have exactly the same conversation design that someone has in any other part of the organization. So I think there's something about us being consistent and having that lovely guide to the way we have conversations that is just, it's driving great outcomes for us. Our people we're in the top 5% for management support, freedom of opinions and recognition. those are pretty great numbers, and those are global benchmarks. So I think, yeah, people get a great work environment, get to feel like they're doing good stuff, and that someone notices, and their opinions are important and heard and count.
That's exciting, Helen. And one of the things I would say, I think from our perspective, the Vertiv side, we really focused on conversations first, more on OKRs more recently, and where we can continue to develop is in the recognition piece. So I loved hearing, kind of how you've reframed that a bit. And that's an area where I know we can continue to develop. I'll dive just a little bit more deeply into the role that I think conversations has played for employees, because I actually believe that it's been one of the most powerful levers in our change for sure. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I know that in a second, but we really led with conversations. And we did that because it wasn't clear if managers were having the discussions with employees that we thought they should have. I was getting, quotes like, "Oh my gosh, that conversation was just incredible. I think that person's career has been saved," because it gave a forum and a structure by which a manager could discuss something with an individual. The feedback that we get from employees is, I have far more frequent and in-depth discussions now than I've ever had in the past. And so anything that's going awry, they're hearing about it, or anything that they're doing well, they're hearing about that. And we've really played with the structure of those conversations over the last 2 years, 3 years now as well. One of the reasons I know that conversations has been so powerful is because when we went out to work remotely at the very beginning of the pandemic, a couple months later, we did a survey about the support that people are feeling in the midst of that. And luckily, right when we went out, we had a conversation cycle that launched right after that. And so we could, change up the questions to be able to deal with the context at hand. And they were having really in-depth conversations with their manager about, what is this experience like for me? In the survey that we did, the highest scoring item was manager communications, and it was 89, which is a very high score in our world as well. So, this aspect was so strong. The other thing that we did is, when we started really launching and paying very much attention to the concept of conversation and how that works, we did manager training along with it each quarter. So for the first 2 weeks of a monthly conversation period, there was training that was available to the managers. And those were things like coaching conversations, how to have a difficult conversation, all of those types of skill sets. So we were very intentional about that. And so I think that employees are just feeling like they're getting their needs met in some ways through this process. Obviously not everything, but it has been an important lever for us.
Yeah, and I try not to be biased, but conversations, even as an employee of Betterworks, is my favorite part of our own program. I just think and when I see the other customers that I work with leverage conversations, you can see quarter over quarter how, even for their own employee base, how it starts to connect the dots. Like, they're like, oh, I get it now. I understand why revisiting my OKRs or any goal setting methodology that you have each quarter, and reflecting on that, and the coaching and development aspects, it really helps connect each piece of that. That leads nicely into my next question. You both had talked about just how many new managers you have, and Kate, you just discussed a little bit more about some of the enablement training you're doing, but how is this time for your new managers, and is there anything else that you're focusing on with regards to enabling the new role?
Well, I would just say, first off, if I was becoming a new manager in this time where we're all working remotely like we are, I would probably feel a bit overwhelmed myself. There's nothing better as a new manager to just be able to walk down the hall and say, hey, how are things? What's going on for you? So how are new managers doing? I think to think about the developmental shift that a person makes from an individual contributor to a manager, coupled with the environment that we're all working within today, is not easy. And so, you know, we do work to try and help them with that for sure. Since the Betterworks platform was introduced into Vertiv, we've also introduced a new manager learning experience, which we call Managing at Vertiv. And we had to shift to deliver that globally and remotely as well. So we had a bit of challenges in front of us as a learning organization. But the whole entire experience, I would say, for managing at Vertiv can kind of be summed up in, if I'm a little bit sarcastic, it's no longer about you, it's about them, right? So that's the kind of developmental shift that people have to make at that stage of their career. And this is what I love about our Elevate Our Talent or performance enablement approach, is because it is all couched in how do you help them be their best? How do you help them achieve the potential that they have and achieve what they want to achieve in service of Vertiv and our customers? So our entire Elevate Our Talent is actually the architecture of that program in many ways, where we're giving them skill sets for things like coaching conversations, you know, what's an OKR and how do you really help an employee set a strong OKR? And so that has now been deployed globally. And I think we're getting very good feedback about that from our managers. And actually the beauty of it being delivered remotely is that we get to stay in touch with them over time in ways that we didn't before. So we can actually hear from them how they're applying that content and what those questions are.
Thank you. Helen, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, we probably don't have, we do have a few new managers in our business, but I think actually the things that we do to enable them are across the whole of Zed. We run an induction program called Getting Connected, which is actually connecting people to our why, our context and our strategy. And then we're just in the process of developing the next module to sit with that, which is called Getting Effective. So it's all very well to be getting connected to everything, but actually getting effective is the other part. And Julie Fitzgerald, who you would have heard from in other programs, actually runs a separate session for all people managers as part of their onboarding. But we also have a people managers community of practice. So we run that on an ongoing basis. Because even actually for, not even for our new managers, even for our regular managers, when we have things that occur only on a once a year or once every 6 month cycle, like individual development planning, it always helps to just have a little bit of a refresh to make sure that you're actually playing at your best when you go into these conversations. So we actually, and that's a free for all. So they can actually also choose what matters to them that they want to actually cover in those communities of practice as they get together. So yeah, communities of practice and good onboarding about the philosophy and the why behind why this is important to us are probably our two big things.
Thank you. We have some questions coming through, so I'll ask one more and then we'll leave the last few minutes to talk through some of the audience's questions. But if you can just touch a bit on, how performance enablement has affected your ROI and the impact it's had to your company goals and strategy overall, and what you've seen. You've already shared some really great measures of success, but I'd love to hear a little bit more. Helen, did you want to start?
Yeah, I returned to the scene of the crime in preparing for this conversation, and I went back to our original business case and interestingly, for why we were making the changes or proposing the changes that we were proposing. And it's amazing, sometimes you forget as a people and culture practitioner, it does take quite a while for the change to come through, and going back to your original vision is actually always quite empowering. So, and I'll read it because we actually said within 9 months, so within 3 quarterly cycles, we want our people to report increased line of sight between what they're working on and our business priorities. And they'll say that they're better able to prioritize and organize their own work based on a clearer understanding of our organization priorities. And we said we should see shifts in things like how connected are you to our strategy, our goal setting, how well are we communicating goals, are we resetting things as we need to, and am I getting good feedback from my manager? And in all of those instances, we measured with employee net promoter scores. So we use a net promoter score rather than engagement because we want to have alignment with our customer experience. So again, this is a monthly thing that we track and monitor. So our strategy went from a net promoter score of 21 to 53, goal setting from 39 to 66, communicating goals from 8 to 48, resetting my goals and objectives from 2 to 48, and feedback, getting good feedback from my manager about how I'm doing from -8 to +52. So, you know, just huge shifts over time. And you don't feel them all the time as you're sitting in it. It's just, yeah, as some of this just does take, it's rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, and it just gets you there. So yeah, we've seen some really significant, in terms of my ROI for this as an intervention, unquestionable. I'm absolutely convinced we've got a return on our investment from doing this and the shifts to our ecosystem. I can see some questions coming through that kind of relate to the ecosystem stuff.
Yeah. Well, the piece I would add from the Vertiv perspective is, if you think about it, we're a now 22,000 employee organization, you know, across the globe. And we're experiencing fast growth, as you might imagine. So when you think about the challenges of trying to drive strategy through that entire system, this is where I feel we've had some of the biggest impact, although it is a bit harder to measure, right? So the argument is scale and reach and transparency across the globe with all of those employees, and has been remarkable, I think. I don't know much better ways that we could do that, as much as our executives you know, try to hold town halls and hold meetings and all of those things. There's no better tool than to have something at your fingertips where you can just click in and see what is it we're trying to achieve and how are we doing relative to that right now. So that's number one. But I will say, on the engagement side, we have, as I said earlier, seen those huge differences, the 7-point increase in engagement, the strategy 8-point increase. But even other types of items like the feedback item, that I get good feedback from my manager, we've seen a 7-point increase over this period of time as well. And these are some of the biggest increases in our survey and in the data. So, you know, like Helen said, sometimes it's hard to put your finger right on something. Sometimes you have to have a belief that something is truly working. And I have that belief here that the OKR methodology, the Betterworks platform, the conversations in particular, and the structure that allows managers to hang their hats on and employees to hang their hats on actually fuels what it is we're trying to achieve.
That's great. I know this is a popular question, so we can just start with this, but are OKRs part of your quarterly incentives, or have you decoupled those? That's a question from the audience.
I'm quite happy to talk to that one. We uncoupled them to a certain extent. So we have a company balance scorecard, because OKRs are about the thing that you're trying to shift. We also have a whole lot of KPIs that we have to deliver. We need to have a safe and reliable business. We need to keep our people healthy. In some instances, we don't want to be shifting some of those. We want to be holding them where they are. So our balance scorecard covers a range of OKRs and KPIs. We have a company incentive based on delivery of the balance scorecard. And we think that's really important, because we did a lot of research. We used to have an individual incentive about individual performance, and we went, actually, so much of what we deliver is delivered across the enterprise through cross-functional teams. This will break. And all the research, everything John Doerr said, and all the other research on OKRs said, do not use OKRs as something you incentivize. It will prevent people from innovating. It will prevent people from taking risks. People will set safer OKRs. So we uncoupled it bravely and boldly. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with my CEO holding hands and jumping with him. But it was absolutely the right thing for us to do. So no, we do not. The only incentives that we have outside of that are sales incentives for our commercial salespeople.
Yeah, very good, Helena. And similar to us as well, I would say we had parts of our organization that were so performance management oriented that the final performance rating was actually a weighted average of things that had been done before. It was a mathematical thing. It was not a manager discernment. And this is what we've been trying to drive, in particular the last 2 years, is to really help managers look at the entire picture. If you have an employee who is willing to set really ambitious OKRs and not achieve all of them, how does that compare to the impact that they're having on the business versus one who sets the ones that we all know are achievable, and it just involves coming in and kind of doing the same thing that you're going to do every day. So this aspect of really moving beyond it's a formula to it's truly a judgment call based off of the actual impact that they're having in the environment within which they're operating. So that's what we have been driving the last several years.
Well, I know that brings us to time. I feel like we could spend a lot more time on this topic. So thank you both for joining our discussion today and just sharing like all of the wins that you've experienced and lessons learned. It's really, really important. So hopefully we can all join again just to continue this discussion in the future. But I hope you all have a good rest of your day, or from morning to you, Helen, and enjoy the rest of EmpowerHR. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.